Hello everyone, welcome to the 6th episode of the podcast from the Melbourne AWS user group. I am Arjen and today again I am joined by my good friends Jean-Manuel and Guy Morton to discuss everything that's new in August 2020. Hi guys.
Hey everyone.
Hello everyone, happy to be here.
Let's just get into the news. There's been a bunch of things. So as usual, let's start with finally in Sydney. If you've listened to previous podcasts, you know that I'm pretty happy with the things that we finally got in Sydney today because it's all about new instance types.
What's your affection for new instance types? Are you just interested in them because they're all new and shiny, or is it the technology change that's interesting, or do you just like to have more options with what you build?
Personally, it's just new and shiny.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's all I care about. No, but especially with the Graviton processors that we now have available to us here. The fun bit with that is, in a way, if you look at the broader world, you see a big shift towards ARM processors.
Yeah.
So it's good to be able to use those because in many cases cheaper to run and you get a big price performance boost out of them. And for a lot of use cases, that's all that matters here.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're kind of green, aren't they? They're the green processor because you're getting more bang for your power. They're not they're not as expensive to run, and so therefore they're cheaper to run in a data center, and we get to pocket the savings. Thank you very much.
Yes, so you didn't mention the announcement, Arjen, is M6G and C6G and R6G who are in Sydney finally. We talked about it in a couple of podcasts before, how the advantage of having Graviton processor, but now it's pretty cool. They are with us and I tested it today. Look like exactly the same. It's an Amazon Linux. You can do SSH to it. You can do YUM update. It's just exactly the same machine, but it's on ARM and it's supposedly 40% better price performance. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I wonder, are there workloads that just won't work on this? I mean, I know, obviously, yes, you can spin up a Linux instance. That's not going to be no problem, but presumably there's going to be the odd package somewhere that's not been ported or isn't compatible or whatever.
Yeah, there's plenty of things that won't be compatible. Anything that goes deep into processor architecture decisions. A good example of, or maybe not an example, but a good way to figure out how hard this is if you look at Apple's transition to use ARM processors for their desktop and how much work that is for everybody.
Yeah.
And then extend that to not just things that Apple allows to run on their systems, but anything Linux and especially Windows based.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty interesting, I guess, expansion of ARM into the cloud world. I guess Intel probably isn't too happy about it, but I guess every empire must crumble at some point. I don't think they're likely to crumble anytime real soon now, I don't suppose, but yeah, it must be a little bit annoying for them to see all those potential sales go a different way.
I think the benefit going to be on EKS as well and ECS, right? If you can use that for your Docker containers. Docker files stay the same. It's probably a couple of dependencies you need to resolve, but this C6, for example, can be 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 48 or 64 cores. So that's pretty nice machine. And the memory is faster as well. So yeah, very interesting.
And there'll be some RDS instances with these chips in at some point too, I guess, now that we've got them in Sydney.
Yeah, they are in preview, yes.
Yeah.
So for the operating system, you can still run, Amazon Linux, obviously, too, Ubuntu, Red Hat, SUSE Linux, Fedora, CentOS, Debian, and FreeBSD. So it's a lot of operating system you can play with.
That's good. The other new instance type is the Inf1 instances or the Inferentia instances, which are the machine learning optimized ones.
Yeah, so if I know nothing about machine learning, so it's no good me saying anything. Who does? you do, Arjen. Tell us about what inference stuff is.
I'm no expert either, but the inference part is mostly used when you train your models. So, and this the Inferentia chips, I don't have the exact specs here right now, but from memory, they were faster than just using dedicated GPUs.
Yes, that's correct. So usually you use GPU, the GPU4, while the Inf1 instance are kind of 30% higher throughput and 45% lower cost per inference. So you can save a lot of money instead of using the NVIDIA family. And the best way of using Infra instance is using SageMaker. You can just from SageMaker call an Inf1 instance and enjoy the faster processing for your machine learning. And in Sydney now, yay!
Yeah, awesome.
So the other thing, not specifically for Sydney, but more for all of Australia, is we got 3 new AWS heroes in Australia.
Yes.
These are Ian Mackay, who is a community hero and is best known for, well, to be honest, trying to break all of AWS. and he's built tools like Format 2 and the console recorder, which allows you to track what you do in the console and basically turn that into CloudFormation or Terraform templates. He's built a whole bunch of tools like that, which is cool.
Yeah, sure are.
The second one was Peter Hansens, who is a serverless hero. He actually presented at our meetup on Wednesday. So that was awesome to see him as well. He does a lot in the community and has run a whole bunch of different conferences. And the last one is Mike Chambers, who is a machine learning hero. I unfortunately haven't had a chance to meet him yet.
So he's probably happy about those Inf1 instances.
He probably is. So, yeah, congratulations to all 3 of them. Last month, there wasn't a lot for serverless. This time, though, we have a lot of serverless announcements.
Well, the one that you just added today kind of looked like it would be quite useful. The IAM condition keys for VPC settings. So I looked at it briefly, but what it looks like to me is there's some new conditions that you can apply in a policy to prevent people from creating lambdas that aren't attached to a VPC.
Yeah, that's exactly that. Very simple. You have an IAM role. You can give the Lambda star to someone to create Lambda function, but if you want to force them to create them in VPCs, then you can add one of these 3 conditions, the VPC ID, the subnet ID, and the security group ID, where you want the Lambda to be created. So if they try to create a Lambda outside or public Lambda, then the creation will fail. So very, very simple.
And it also works with updates, yeah.
Yes. So very simple, just another IAM role, but I think very important for compliance and security when you want to run your Lambda inside your VPC. I'm sure, Arjen, you want to talk about Go and Amazon Linux too?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting in a way. So now all languages are available on Amazon Linux too, even though obviously we shouldn't care about what anything runs on. But in the end, as many people so often like to point out, it's still servers underneath. And with Amazon Linux 1 being deprecated and completely being gone basically by the end of the year, that means that Lambda had to be updated as well. So many of the newer runtimes already ran on Amazon Linux 2, and now that has been extended to basically have all of them. And that starts with, well, some of these are a support for Golang, and yes, Jam, that is my preferred language.
Yes.
So it's good to see that. It's a bit different than it used to be. It used to be that for Go, you had the Go 1.x runtime, and now you can just use the standard Amazon Linux 2 runtime, which has its own name, which is provided.al2, which is the same you use for the custom runtimes to build on top of. So in a way, I suppose that means they switched it to a custom runtime instead of the one it used, the dedicated one it used to be. But either way, it just now runs on the base image, which isn't really a surprise as you just uploaded binaries in the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited about that. I haven't had a chance really to update any of applications would actually have any impact. I mean, if it's just something small, you don't see a difference. But it's good to see that in general, everything is now available on Amazon Linux too.
That's cool. The other thing I saw in the serverless part was the Lambda support for MSK now, so Apache Kafka managed streaming from AWS. So you can feed your Lambda function with the topics of Kafka. And the way it does it basically is you subscribe to the topic and it batch the responses, the record into batch. And when you reach 6 meg, the Lambda function get triggered and execute whatever manipulation you want to do on the messages. And I checked it. It's pretty simple. You look at your Lambda, you have a new trigger named MSK. You pick your cluster, you pick your topic, and that's very straightforward. So yeah, good addition. A lot of customers look at Kafka, especially in the financial industry, message-based kind of updates to feed in different environments, feed database, update records across different systems. And having Lambda to be able to do that straight from Kafka, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, cool. So I understand it basically works the same way as it would with Kinesis?
Oh, exactly the same. Basically, I mean, the trigger you got on your Lambda on your left, now you have MSK in there and you pick your cluster. You need to be in the same account though to be able to access it, obviously. But apart from that, that's all. Pretty simple. The same account, the same region, I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. API Gateway also had a bunch of updates, specifically HTTP APIs. In a way, it's a bit of catching up with the REST APIs. It now supports wildcard custom domain names and integration with 5 new services.
Yeah. So you need to support wildcard, you need to provide an ACM with a wildcard certificate as well with your DNS. And what I found out is if you have an account A with AWS user group and you want to do a wildcard in account B with AWS user group, you can't because you need to destroy first, because they are conflicting naming there. So if they're in the same account, that's okay, but they cannot be in different accounts. So there's a bit of limitation there if you have, a different pipeline for different API with different name. So something to watch out.
Yeah. And the integrations basically means that you can have other things than Lambda at the backend. The new ones that it supports are AppConfig, EventBridge, Kinesis data streams, SQS, and step functions, which sounds useful.
Yeah. In the announcement as well, AWS said that they want to bring to parity of functionality between the REST API and the HTTP API, so that's going to, they're going to release new functionality in there. They added as well on the API gateway some new logs, and that on the 2 API, the API gateway for HTTP and the REST and the WebSocket, so you can enable more advanced logging, and that includes latency, status code, call phases. So you have a bit more information on your API behavior and your traffic, and it's available in all regions.
Cool. Step functions?
Yeah. You've played around with it a bit, haven't you?
No, I haven't. Well, I've played around with step functions a little bit. Haven't played around with these new language enhancements at all. But so they've just added some enhancements to the choice state and task states, so you can do some sort of more granular comparisons and tests. So what is it? You can test for null values, you test for existence of a variable, wildcarding and variable to variable comparison. So it's just more, I guess, power inside those tasks and choice nodes to be able to make more complex decisions, I guess, more complex logic decisions inside those flows. So instead of having to, I guess, call out to a Lambda function to make some sort of more complex choice, you can potentially do it all in the choice or task state because of that more sophisticated capability.
Yeah, at the same time, AWS Step Function adds support for SageMaker processing this month, and that's really help orchestrating end-to-end machine learning workflow. We call it ML Ops, right? To try to really do the data pre-processing, the post-processing, the feature engineering, and then data validation. And at the end, you end up with in SageMaker to be able to process and Step Function help you to orchestrate all of that. So that's cool. I like it. Yeah, we will see more of that, I think, with Step Function. That's really becoming a very popular product at the moment with all the new release for the last 3 months. Do you want to move to containers? There are a lot of news on containers this month.
Yes, definitely a lot of good news on containers. Let's just start with some Fargate things. Big news for people who use Fargate on EKS. First of all, you can save money.
Yay.
Because it's now included in the compute savings plan.
Yeah, that's good.
That's definitely good. And it was, in a way, a strange omission that if you ran Fargate on ECS, it was in the plan. If you ran it on EKS, it wasn't.
That's AWS penalty on EKS. No, it's good because you can now with the saving plan, because it's across everything now. You have EC2, you have Lambda, you have ECS, you have EKS, you have with Fargate. You can really choose whatever, and you can migrate one app to the other, and you keep saving money on your compute. That's a very good step for AWS to have that, and you can have up to 52% saving on your compute. So please have a look at the saving plan, do some calculation, and apply them to the account. That's pretty important. Don't pay full price.
So the other Fargate on EKS announcement is that it now supports EFS file systems. So just again, like with Fargate on ECS, you can mount an EFS disk drive. How do you...
Storage. Yeah. Well, it's encrypted at rest and in transit with NFS4, so it's permanent storage. And you need EKS 117 to be able to use that. And WordPress, Drupal, Jira, Jenkins, all of that need permanent storage, so it makes sense to mount that on EKS the same way you can do it on ECS now, really coming to parities or functionalities.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of people would be excited about EFS coming to EKS as they were when it came to ECS.
Yeah. I mean, when you start using, plugins to try to mount drives and all of that, it's a nightmare, right? And then when you start moving AZs, EFS is multi-AZ product, so that makes absolutely sense to have some permanent storage on that. I wouldn't run a database though, still, on EKS or on EFS, but at least you have some permanent storage for something like images and common stuff. Yeah.
It's not the answer for everything, and can be misused. It's like EFS on Lambda, right? It's just not by definition a good idea. So just, I guess, but when you need it or when it makes sense, it's there at least. And I mean, it comes on the back of all the other EFS enhancements that have happened over the last few months too.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
With the increased throughput and the, better baseline performance and all those sorts of things that have come through. It's really, they've obviously invested quite a lot in all that underlying tech, and we're now seeing, everyone, all the developers can get the benefits. Well, developers and everyone else.
There was an update on the load balancer UDP for ECS as well. So for people who run DNS on containers or other thing like that, you can now load balance UDP traffic into ECS.
Into Fargate on ECS.
To Fargate on ECS, yeah. So it was possible on ECS before, now it's ECS with Fargate, and that's available in US East, US West, Europe, and Tokyo. Not in Sydney yet. And you need ECS 1.4 for that.
And the same is done for EKS as well.
Yes, and for EKS you need Kubernetes 1.15, which is not the latest one, but 2 before. And you need EC2 instance-based worker node. Yep. But the pods running on Fargate are not supported. So EKS is supported, but not Fargate. So it's interesting that there's still a little gap there. So you can't use Fargate and then send some with EKS and send some UDP traffic from your network load balancer yet. I'm sure that's going to come.
Yeah, as we see, they're trying to make it more equal. So
yeah. Well, and to mention is for new clusters only. At the moment, so be careful. You might need to migrate if you want to use that feature straight away. And AWS is saying that in a couple of weeks they will bring that feature to existing clusters. So not yet, only for new one at the moment.
Yeah. But speaking of EKS, that it also had a couple of good quality of life announcements. First, as we mentioned earlier, it now supports ARM-based instances, so you can use all these fancy new Graviton processors in your EKS clusters, which is
super exciting. Yeah.
And you need Kubernetes 1.15 as well. Yeah.
But the bigger one, in my opinion, is probably even that managed node groups now support launch templates and custom AMIs, which makes, the managed node groups a lot more useful for a lot of people.
I had many customers who had to stay with self-managed nodes because they couldn't tag, they couldn't encrypt, they couldn't install certificate or the user data stuff you do usually. So now with the managed node group supporting launch template, you can really be very granular on your instances and, tag them, and store stuff with user data. And if you still can't use the managed nodes, then you can even provide your own AMI, and AWS will do that. So you get the best of both, where you have your personalized node, and then you have EKS who does the provisioning, the joining, and the upgrading of the nodes when it's needed. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a good improvement. One that I'm personally less enthused about, but that might just be me, is the AWS controllers for Kubernetes preview.
Why not? Why you don't like it? You can do S3, SNS, SQS, Dynamo, ECR, API gateway.
I'm just not a big fan of controlling your infrastructure from within your Kubernetes cluster.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are use cases for it, but it sounds like it's also one of those things that can easily be abused, especially if you use like blue-greens for your clusters for when you do upgrades. What will happen to it?
Yeah.
Will your infrastructure suddenly not be managed anymore, or does it mean it will get destroyed when you get rid of the cluster? I'm sure there are answers to these questions, and if I look deeper into it and would try it out, I might suddenly find that my concerns are completely useless. It's just looking at it without that I'm a bit worried about things like that.
I agree with you when you explain it this way. That makes sense. But I found that the Kubernetes community, I really love to be able to provide everything from Kubernetes and create load balancer from that, create attachment, create ingress traffic, create logs, nodes, everything from Kubernetes. For the purists, I prefer ECS myself, because I think it's a better product. But when I was talking to an engineer the other day, he was saying, I'll try ECS, and I had to do everything. I had to create a load balancer. I had to do all of that. Yes. Well, it's an infrastructure, right? You create, and then they all interact together. Where in Kubernetes, you create Kubernetes and you need to maintain Kubernetes. So it's a different way of doing things. But I guess that's moving the controller, moving towards what Kubernetes native is doing. Good or bad. Yeah. I mean, maybe we're going to have like CloudFormation running in Kubernetes now. I don't know. Yeah.
But to some extent, isn't that capability a bit like the sort of SAM philosophy, where you kind of you're bundling everything to do with your microservice into one package? Like, it's not just the Lambda functions, it's the DynamoDB tables, and it's the buckets are all created in the context of that one microservice and all kind of versioned into that. Is the idea that if you're using EKS for microservices, you want to be able to access it or build things the same way, so that they're kind of ephemeral, or they're all bound together into the one deployment, if you know what I mean, or the one sort of application package?
Maybe. And looking at it that way, sounds reasonable.
There was a talk on the latest AWS Sydney on demand, and there was a GitOps, EKS and GitOps, and that's the philosophy you described, Guy, to be able to create everything from the same repo, from your cluster to all the environment attached to it.
Yeah.
Maybe there is some benefit there, but it's still building a cloud into another cloud, so it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I think it's probably just one of those things, but it's like EFS on Lambda, right? There's a discipline that you kind of need to have applied to how you work as well. That if it makes sense to package all those services into the one microservice, because you want that table to be created, and then you want it to be destroyed when you pull that thing down. It's probably horses for courses. If it's used the right way, used with the right kind of design thinking, then it's probably a good thing. If it's used to create a database that's supposed to be permanent, then obviously you're back in the land that you're talking about, Arjen. If it's like, but maybe something gets created and now I don't know whether it's supposed to be being created or if it's supposed to be ephemeral or not. So maybe it's just as things become more complex, we need more discipline around how we do things, I guess. With great power comes great responsibility.
Yep, that's true.
Another one that is close to my heart is the metadata service version 2, which is now compatible with EKS. I did a talk last year about that. SSRF attacks are really omnipresent across the internet. So if you're running anything which is public facing. You can suffer a metadata service attack through SSRF and steal your keys and create all sorts of havoc on your account. So AWS released version 2 of that meta service, who instead of requesting the 169.254 or 169.254 metadata just with a HTTP call, you need to do first a pull request, have a token, and then inject that token every time you ask that service to interrogate the metadata service. That was not compatible with EKS up to now because of the two hops you have to do it. Now, by default, the Kubernetes service provide 2 hops, so you can enable metadata service number 2 on your EKS cluster to protect your keys, and disable metadata service number 1 at the EC2 level or at the account level or through an SCP as well through your account. So I'm very pushing for that because there is still too many applications who are vulnerable for that, and that's very dangerous when you're in the cloud space.
Yeah. To clarify, the metadata service 2 is always available, but you can enforce that it's the only option. Usually it just runs when certain headers are included. It will do that. Actually, with a client recently, the week before this was announced, we ran into an issue where the SDK or library injected that header and they started failing on retrieving refresh tokens for the IAM role. And that turned out to be an issue with the number of hops. So this would have actually fixed that if it had happened, if it had been released a little bit earlier.
Yeah, but you can choose the number of hops by default. I think it's 1, and then now EKS is 2. You can as well, to be able to do some troubleshooting before you migrate, is to look at your CloudWatch. There is a marker now and a metric who tell you how many times you have been using the version 1 or the version 2 in the life of that instance, so you can see exactly where you need to resolve that. But if you don't want to suffer SSRF attacks like a very big financial company in the US last year, move to number 2.
So let's have a look at EC2 and VPC then.
A new instance again for you, Arjen, today. A new instance like the C5AD. There's C5A, which is with the AMD EPYC processor, and they added some NVMe disk on that. So, you can go up to 96 vCPU, 192 gig memory, and 3.8 terabyte of NVMe. So, and they are in Sydney now, so it's pretty cool. Big instance running AMD processors with NVMe disk if you need that for your cache.
Yep, there's little I can add to that. As I said earlier, it's fun when the new instances are there. But one that you probably like as well is the prefix lists now working with Transit Gateway.
Oh yeah, that's cool. Yes. So last month, I think, or the month before, AWS released VPC prefix list, which is, grouping your CRDR, IP range and blocks into a single object to be able to use a security group easier. You can share them with RAM in multiple accounts. And now that single object, you can reference it inside your Transit Gateway route. So that will simplify quite a lot the routes you can declare in Transit Gateways. So you can have, for example, all your on-prem range. It can be, 192, 172, all sort of different IP range you have on-prem. You can convert them into one prefix list and have that into a single route. And that can be shared between accounts and shared for security group NACLs and other places. So I think it's good. A lot of updates this month as well on the VPN. I feel like they suddenly, AWS decided to update all the VPN tools in one go. So you can do IPv6 now to Transit Gateway. I don't think you can't do IPv6 yet to the normal VGW, but you can do that to the Transit Gateway if you have IPv6 on-prem and in your VPC. Still, I don't see a lot of customers using IPv6 in-house, so. And then a couple of improvement on encryption, integrity, key exchange algorithm and stuff like that for side-to-side VPN as well. So new encryption on 128, GCM 16, IES 256, GCM 16 as well, and then a couple of integrity check with SHA-2. So yeah, if you really need that advanced security for compliance reason, that makes sense to upgrade your VPN. Sorry, I keep talking. But one I think who has been a pain for me for a couple of customers it was the key exchange initiation. I don't know if you had that problem where AWS didn't initiate it. So if your tunnel was going down, that was your problem to bring it back up. Now AWS just changed that, and AWS can initiate the key exchange, so your VPN can come back up if it goes down, initiated by the AWS side instead of being only from your customer side. So I think that's a good improvement.
Yep. And look, we all know this is your favorite part sometimes. But hey, look, there's more for the instance metadata service.
Yes, it's true. So that's more to kind of find your instance to see where it is. So they added 5 new fields, which is a region field. So you can ask your instance, in which region are you, please? That's interesting. But more the +1 group name, partition number, and host ID. And as well, your real availability zone ID. I think that's important when you really want to balance your workload across physical availability zone and not just relying on the name of the availability zone AWS provide you. Remind you that the zone ID is a real zone, where the availability zone will appear in your console it's a random ABC letters given by AWS. Do you want to move to DevOps?
Our favorite Code Guru is back. This time with full repository analysis for the Code Guru reviewer. Basically what this is where originally Code Guru just runs on pull requests to tell you, hey, you can improve this. Now they've realized that people probably work with existing repositories instead of building a new one just to use with Code Guru. So you can now analyze your whole repository. Obviously, there's costs involved, but it might help you with your code. So go for it.
You can still specify a specific branch, of the repository, right? And you can say, okay, I want to scan it now, and I want to scan all the new merge requests, but then I want to scan once a month as well the full repo again. So you can have kind of this kind of choice of how you do your scanning as well.
Talking of build tools, the EC2 image builder components can now be developed locally. So image builder is still AWS's answer to building your AMIs. I have mixed feelings about it still, but the ability to build your components locally is definitely a good one. So you can just test them properly before you upload them and deal with all the annoying versioning that components have. So that's a good thing. Maybe more on the upside. One change that I found good is with System Manager Explorer. So if you remember, a couple months ago, System Manager Explorer came out as a way to have a multi-account overview of some of your trusted advisor scans. And now they've expanded it to include an overview of multi-account summary of your AWS support cases. So you can see support cases that are in all the different accounts, which is definitely a good thing. I suspect if you have many accounts with developers who can raise their own support cases, but you still want to keep an eye out on, hey, what's happening? Are we not asking the same question over and over again?
Yes. Yeah, and you need business support or enterprise support plan to be able to benefit and that functionality, and it's good because you can filter the data, you can export the result to a CSV, for example, if you want to review them, or you can talk to your account manager at AWS and show all the cases you have. So I think that's very good for large enterprise who want to follow where their support cases are. That was missing, I think. Yeah. There's an update with code deploy. You can now support VPC endpoint. As usual, VPC endpoint, you have that in your VPC, but that allow you to deploy now using code deploy into application or internal only without any internet gateway. That's a good improvement on the product that was missing, I think, as well, to be able to use code deploy for internal app. And talking about internal only, Cloud9, now released with enhanced VPC support, and that means that you don't need a public IP on your Cloud9 instance anymore to be able to do SSH to it. Basically leverage what System Manager, Connection Manager is to be able to access your instance. So when you create your Cloud9 instance, you can say, I want no ingress traffic, and then it will create that inside your VPC in the private zone, and then you will use SSM Connection Manager to be able to connect to your Cloud9 instance. So much more secure than it used to be.
Talking of secure things, shall we then have a look at security improvements?
Yeah, why shouldn't we?
An interesting one here is that Amazon Guard Duty has basically taken over some of the Macy functionality, or has part of Macy built in now?
Inherited it, yeah. Yeah, it's like they've taken out probably one of the things that people would have really liked to have had, but weren't prepared to pay the Macy price tag. I mean, obviously Macy did get a price reduction, I think, earlier this year, but they've obviously looked at this particular part of the suite, I guess, and thought, actually, that really fits logically inside a guard duty kind of world. Yeah, and it's sort of more affordable, and it gives you continuous monitoring and profiling of S3 data access events and S3 configuration changes to detect suspicious activity. So requests coming from an unusual geolocation, disabling of preventative controls such as block public access, or API call patterns consistent with an attempt to discover misconfigured bucket permissions.
Yeah, so if you come from a Tor exit node or something like that, you will get an alert saying that your S3 bucket is getting access from an unusual spot. But that's still just the access, right? Macy is still going to continue to be the content analysis, the exfiltration of PI information and stuff like that, where this one is really focusing on the type of access and who enumerate your S3 bucket from which IP and any kind of unusual activities, but not the content of the bucket itself. So yeah, that's a very good addition. And by the way, is by default now if you enable guard duty. But if you had guard duty before, you need to go and choose and enable it. And it will give you a pre-value of the increased cost of your guard duty monthly cost, according to the bucket you have.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
Another massive update, I'm sure this month, and Arjen, you sure you have seen that with customers as well, is certificate manager private certificate authority now can be shared across multiple accounts. That's absolutely a massive improvement on the product, right?
Yeah.
It was not usable before. I'll remind everyone it's $400 a month to have a private CA on AWS, so it's not a cheap cost. And before you had to have one per account, or exporting the certificate from one into a file and re-importing them into another file. It was a nightmare. Now it's so easy. And I really recommend to look at that product again, because I advise my customer not to use that. So you can share with Resource Access Manager across multiple accounts, and then magically the private CA appear in the other account and it can be consumed through API, and you use SEM to store your certificate. So really, really good.
Yeah, so much better. You can just have it now managed from your security account, for example, and everybody can use it.
Yeah, you can share at your org level, at your OU level, or just a single account. And interestingly, inside or outside your org as well. Usually AWS like to share this kind of stuff only inside your org, but this time you can share outside your org. So if you wanted to give an access to a service provider or something to use one of your cert, you could definitely share that, and they could consume your certificate. That's good.
Another service I know you're fond of is the Firewall Manager.
Oh, yeah, little upgrade this month with Firewall Manager. It can support now application load balancer and classic load balancer for monitoring and remediating the security group who are too much open to the world. So if you do a 0/0 on all ports, your Firewall Manager will have a look at it and then probably disable that firewall, or you can pre-create security group for account and populate them across your different environment.
Let's look at storage and databases then, which has possibly the biggest announcement for the month with the new EBS volume type.
Yeah, that's massive, isn't it?
Yeah, so we've now got IO2 volumes, which, as the name implies, is the successor to IO1. And its main features are higher durability, more IOPS per gigabyte. I know you love that word, Guy.
I do, yeah.
And
all of that for the same price as IO1 volumes.
Yes. So yeah, it's 99.999 durability, making them 2,000 times more reliable than just a common disk drive. So that's very impressive. And with 500 IOPS per gigabyte instead of the 50 initially. So really focusing on big database there, SAP HANA, Microsoft SQL servers, IBM DB2, and all this type of database. And it is in Sydney straight away. I was impressed with that the product was released and it was everywhere. It's like AWS bought a new SAN device and then stick it to every data center and make it available for everyone. That's awesome. Yeah.
And it's such a massive improvement as well.
Yeah.
I think you can just easily change the type of your existing IO1 instances to IO2, so there really isn't much of a downside to it.
Yeah, it's very easy. You can modify your volumes at AWS EC2 modify volume, and you convert one to the other and to the new version, and you get the benefit out of it. The only feature which is not available yet on IO2, which is available in IO1, is the multi-attach device for clusters or stuff like that, but it's on the roadmap apparently, so it's going to come very soon.
Well, let's not say very soon. We know it's an AWS roadmap.
I'm too optimistic, sorry. And the use case is very minimal, right? Who wants to run multi-attach rack device or clusters on AWS when you can use RDS instead? So
it's great news, and anybody who runs IO1 has IO1 volumes, I'd say, unless you use multi-attach, upgrade them and enjoy the benefits.
It's still capped to 64,000 IOPS, right? There is no more IOPS in total on the disk you can add, but the number of IOPS per gigabyte for smaller disks is good.
Another announcement that we've already alluded to earlier is the preview for RDS using M6G and R6G instance types.
Yes, this one not in Sydney yet. It's still in preview, only in US, Virginia, Ohio, Oregon, Frankfurt, Ireland, and Tokyo. Not in Sydney yet. And it's only for MySQL, Postgres, and the support for Aurora and MariaDB will come soon. Again, what does that mean soon? With AWS, we don't know, but it's same benefit, better processor, faster processing for a smaller cost.
Yeah. So obviously having those instances now in Sydney means we should get those soon, I guess.
Yeah. When they go GA, yeah.
I'll be honest though, when it comes to databases, I'm not all that fussed about previews not being immediately available here, because it's not something you want to run on your production workloads anyway.
A preview, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Glue version 2 is 10 times faster. I think it's massive. And now build per minute. It used to be build per 10-minute block, which was really expensive when you were running very small jobs and ETL Spark jobs. So now it's build per minute, and then it starts 10 times faster. So I think we will see more of the usage of Glue for this, instead of trying to run your EMR cluster 24/7, because that was one of the problems my customers were looking at. Okay, shall I run Glue? But it's going to cost me more because I need to run the batch with 5 minutes, and I get charged 10 minutes every time that running my EMR cluster 24/7. So I need to recalculate that now design, and then it is in Sydney as well, so we have the benefit of that.
Cool.
SQL Server 2019, we can use CU5. I don't know. That's who cares, right?
You're trying to get us excited about that. It's not working.
No, who cares? Well, one was impressed with Elasticache for Redis now support up to 500 nodes per cluster.
Yeah.
Who run this? 500 nodes for Redis. I mean, I understand for sharding reasons, and you can run maybe 26 of them, like one per letters of the alphabet for your customers or something. But 500, very impressive if people are running that on AWS. And for that, you need Redis 506 to be able to run it in a cluster mode.
Cool.
The other, in a way, fun one is the database migration service now supporting MongoDB 4 as a source. This is, in my opinion, very clearly aimed at making people use DocumentDB, which is MongoDB 3.4 or something compatible. So yeah, this is a way for people who are on newer Mongo versions to pull them into the AWS managed space after all.
The other one for FSX for Lustre. They used to be only SSD version. Now they have a hard drive version to save a bit of money when you don't need the same latency of SSDs. And to compare the price, when you look at it, it's 2.7 cents per gigabyte in Sydney. with hard drive to compare the 17 cents with SSDs. So there's a big gap there. You can save some money. And you can still, with hard drive, having a SSD cache version who will cache a lot of your imminent data, or the one you just been reading and writing. And that had a little cost up to 5 cents per gigabit, but still much cheaper than the 17 cents.
We had a couple of AI and ML announcements, but not a lot of major things this month. A new learning capsule for Deep Composer. I'm sure Guy will be all over that after this podcast.
Yeah. A learning capsule. Yeah, okay. That conjures up an image of like something that we put something inside and bury it in the ground. Is this something you put Deep Composer in and bury it in the backyard?
Maybe not quite, but yeah. Forecast adding holiday calendars for many countries. That is obviously useful. It's probably more useful when we go back to more normal lifestyles.
Yes. And this country includes New Zealand and Australia, which is good. So now, hopefully, I wonder if there are Melbourne Cup days and stuff like that, like in Melbourne only, or if it is all the public holiday for Australia in general, with the Queen's birthday date, different for each state and all of that. That's going to be fun.
I'm kind of surprised this wasn't there on day one. But
yes.
A database of holiday calendars for 66 countries. Surely that's not new information.
No, it's not very hard to source either.
No, yeah. Anyway, that might be a candidate for the. Didn't it always do that?
Yeah, it should have done that from day one, I guess. But because Forecast was really US centric at the beginning, used by AWS and Amazon itself, it makes sense that they had this functionality now.
Yeah. So the other announcement there is, in my opinion, a candidate for either best or worst headline in an announcement.
The scariest feature name.
Yeah.
Ever. Yeah. AI launches delete human task UI capability. Yeah, we knew they were after us. We knew it was only a matter of time before they figured us out. They figured out a way to delete us, and yeah. But in reality, what it is, right, is there's a part of the augmented AI product. You could render a task for a human to do, but you couldn't, as I understand it, you couldn't previously delete that, but now you can.
Yeah. So it's a very, very minor announcement. Yes. That just
it's a nano. Yeah. It's a nano candidate. Yeah. Hey everyone, you know that thing where you could create before? Now you can delete it as well. It's up there with Connect. I think we're going to get to it in the other cool stuff. Adds cut, copy, and paste. Connect adds cut, copy, and paste to the contact flow design. It's like, again, wouldn't it have always done that? No, it didn't. Yeah. Anyway, let's not skip ahead and spoil all the fun.
Well, how about we just move immediately to the other cool stuff?
Yeah. So it's interesting, usually I guess these services get a rash of announcements in 1 month. Like, so this has got 4, while we're on the subject of Connect, there's 4 announcements for Connect. And I haven't actually looked at any of these, but I just know that there's 4 of them. And one of them's cut, copy and paste. Have either of you guys looked at these announcements in any details? Do you know what they do? I mean, they all seem quite minor, but probably useful. I mean, obviously Connect's getting a lot of attention, right? Because people are moving their call centers to the cloud because they don't have call centers full of people. So I guess this is just kind of, it seems to me like these announcements are all just filling out the product, like rounding it out, taking it from MVP to actually customers need these features to actually make it useful.
Yeah. So while making fun of the cut, copy, paste for the contact flow designer, it is actually quite useful, as apparently before you couldn't copy things.
Yeah, because you inevitably when you're designing flows, you end up with 3 or 4 nodes that you just want to put on every single flow, and you want to be able to copy and paste those suckers over and over again.
Yep.
Yeah, it would have been really annoying to have to draw them out and configure them all individually. Yeah.
especially as there's still no API available to do it in code.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which would be more preferable, and then you get cut, copy, and paste out of the box in your editor.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like it's kind of strange in a way. I guess this happens in AWS. There's probably, different teams working on things differently, so they're sort of doing it concurrently. You sort of think something like the state language for step functions would have been a logical way of even extending that to describe, to be used to create contact flows for Connect. A lot of the stuff is similar, right? It's decision nodes and branching, if this is that, then go over there. If it's not, go over there. It would have made perfect sense, really, to extend that, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, hey, Jeff, if you need me, here I am. I'll help you fix your products, mate. No worries.
Do you want to talk about quantum computing?
Yep, because quantum computing is cool, even though I have very little understanding of it.
Well, that's what makes it cool. That you don't understand it, right?
It's available through Amazon Bracket, which is the name for that. It's kind of a simulator, and it's available in US East, US West, and California region, which is interesting.
So, I mean, I said that the other day too. I thought it was a simulator, but it's actually both. So you can simulate. So it's got like a simulated environment, but it's also got actual quantum computing hardware that you can run stuff on too. So you can do your testing on simulated quantum computers and then run your quantum algorithms on actual quantum computing hardware. So what have they got? Quantum annealing hardware from D-Wave. 2 types of gate-based quantum computers, ion trap devices from IonQ, and systems built on superconducting qubits from Rigetti probably. Yeah, so if that meant something to you, then tuck in, go on.
What do we have in a still cool? SES, you can bulk import and bulk delete email address from account level suppression list. Yeah, great. You have an API now. You can do it. Before you couldn't do that. You have to do it email per email, which would have been a nightmare. So I'm glad they add that functionality. And then, we talk about it. SNS launch client library supporting message payload up to 2 gig. That was available in SQS for a while, and now they brought the same system to SNS.
Yeah.
You still store your file on S3, and you have an extended client library to be able to call that file and push it through your SNS payload. So interesting.
Yeah, and again, just like with SQS, that client library is Java only.
What?
Yes, I know you like it.
They should put that in the announcement title.
Java only announcement.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Or we should all just accept reality and just become Java developers, because otherwise we just miss out on all the cool things. We can't use Code Guru. We can't do 2 gig bloody payloads in SNS. It's not fair.
One who is keep growing is the Los Angeles zone. So AWS introduced a second local zone, which is interesting that they're building slowly the region in there.
I was thinking as well. Doesn't that basically make it a region by now?
Well, I guess, yeah. But because they have dedicated metro fiber with high throughput to connect them both. And so you can start kind of load balancing your environment between the two. You still depend on the Oregon region though to be able to enable that zone. And you have only EC2, VPC, EBS, FSX, load balancing, EMR, and RDS. That's it. So it's not a full kind of environment yet. But, what about we have one in Australia soon? That would be good. Instead of creating a second one in LA, can we have a one for us, please?
We're just not important enough.
Yeah.
We don't have enough people, obviously. So that's 2 in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah.
And similar to the local zone is the rollout of wavelength.
Speaking of low latency, so this is where they've got AWS infrastructure in the telcos data centers at the edge of the network. So this is for 5G. So if you're building an app on 5G and you've got access to wavelength, you can put some of your AWS application infrastructure in this wavelength environment and get sort of single digit latency between your mobile app and your infrastructure over 5G. And presumably, I guess it's all of the qualities of 5G and throughput and so forth as well, not just latency. But I think latency is the main low latency is the main kind of draw card.
Yeah, and it's obviously mostly aimed at IoT type compute requirements. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out, even though it's probably going to be a very long time before we get it over here.
Yeah, yep. I think we can probably forget about it in our lifetimes, Arjen. Oh, so you are a bit younger than me. You're much younger than me, but you know, an old man of my vintage. I've given up hope. All right, is that it? Oh no, there was one thing: the interactive video service. I thought this was an interesting announcement. Well, it's probably not that interesting, but it's I thought it was I did think it was an interesting announcement because it's for the Amazon Interactive Video Service. They announced the service last month, and now they're giving you the control over who can watch your live stream. So yeah, I guess given that we're all in COVID lockdown, given that there's a lot of services now that are only available to be streamed like online. Like if you think about musicians, for instance, they want to have a concert, they want to be able to live stream it and have interactive like audience participation, but they also want to be able to control who can actually see it. So I guess this is one of those things they're probably fast tracking, I guess, because there's a lot of demand for that stuff right now. I mean, I'm not saying any of this is kind of new. I think the technology itself's been around for a while, but Amazon's obviously spending a bit of time and effort, you know, putting all the features together so that people can use it to do those sorts of things that they need to do now.
So it's in 3 regions at the moment: US East, Virginia, US West, Oregon, and Europe, Ireland. And yeah, you can connect to the service just by using Open Broadcaster software like the OBS, which is a free video management streaming software. Very, very good.
Mm-hmm. Presenting these things, you know, every month we often, you know, look at the list of announcements, and sometimes we look at things and we go, hey, is that really worthy of a whole page on a website? It's such a tiny announcement. And we sort of think maybe AWS just needs to get their announcement count up this month, so they've you know made a post about this. So anyway, so we thought it might be fun every month to nominate some candidates for the smallest announcement of the month, and we decided that a good name for that would be the Nano Award. So at the end of the year, we'll recount all the Nano candidates for the year, and we'll have a trophy which will be so small you can't see it. And we'll post that in an envelope off to Jeff. So this month, what did you think, Arjen? What was your candidate for the Nano?
Well, there were a couple of interesting ones, and we've mentioned them throughout as well. One that I think I'll mention is the holiday calendars addition to Forecast. Yes, on the one hand, it is a pretty massive thing to incorporate that data. On the other hand, it's something that should have been there from the start.
Yeah.
You can get access to holiday calendars everywhere. If you have a Gmail account, it's included. You can just say, click here for your holiday calendars.
Yeah. If Google has it, Amazon should have had it. Well, I think the IoT one, which I'll take, is the audit finding suppression that was announced, which basically lets you not see some things in the console. That's really in a nutshell what it is. And that doesn't really seem like it's worthy of a whole announcement all on its own. What about you, JM?
Maybe probably the Connect ad support for early media and outbound phone calls. I found that, not very interesting, but that's just me.
All right, cool. Well, we'll just everyone will have to tune in at the end of the year. We'll maybe have a special episode for the Nanos. We'll get some celebrities in to insult each other and drink too much, and award the Nano. Tune in then.
And that's it for this month. I'll start with thanking our sponsors as usual, our gold sponsor Enabler, and our silver sponsors AC3, CMD Solutions, and Do It International. And of course, I want to thank you two, JM and Guy. Thank you for joining me again.
Always a pleasure to discuss with you, Arjen, the news of the month. Always.
Thanks for having me.
And I want to thank all of you for listening. And hopefully we'll see you again next month. Thank you all, and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.